Friends, in recent episodes, I have been discussing, and will continue to do so, whether the Quran is a revelation from God or an invention of Prophet Muhammad, designed as a tool for control. If the Quran were truly a divine revelation, the Prophet would have presented witnesses. But he simply claimed that an angel came to him and revealed it. No one else saw this angel. Only he claimed to see it. Furthermore, this angel allegedly informed him that the Quran was the final scripture and that he was the last prophet. Yet, before his passing, the Prophet did not have the Quran compiled in an organized form, detailing when and under what circumstances each verse was revealed. Nor did he publish it in a book format across various regions. This, despite knowing that if the Quran did not reach the people, they might become divided or turn away from faith. Similarly, about the hadiths, as I've mentioned before and will continue discussing, if hadiths were so crucial, the Prophet would have written or dictated them in his lifetime. Instead, he even forbade those who tried to write them. The term hadith in Arabic simply means occurrence or event, yet scholars limited it to only what the Prophet said or did, which is a major misconception. Hadith, meaning event, can refer to any OCCURANCEOR event that took place in the world. Nevertheless, 2.5 to 3 centuries after the Prophet's passing, Abbasid caliphs and various rulers had hadiths compiled, dictated to selected scholars in a way that served their own interests and justified their rule, as there were no eyewitnesses to validate them. Taking advantage of this gap, a series of 6 books was compiled based on hearsay, with no witnesses to verify them. Imams later created categories for these hadiths, saying, for instance, that 1% of them were considered worthy of writing. They labeled them as authentic, weak, good, rejected, or ambiguous, among others. Today, Islamic scholars declare themselves experts in just 1% of vague hadiths. If 99% of hadiths weren't considered worthy of being recorded, how can we trust that the remaining 1% is accurate? As I said, nobody can definitively claim whether hadiths are true or false. This ambiguity was exploited by rulers and the scholars who wrote them down, using the freedom to pen whatever they wished on a blank canvas without a source to verify the content. Due to this, people ended up with a Quran that may have inaccuracies, as the Quran in the Prophet's time was recorded on cloth, stones, leaves, and bones with no proper order. After his death, when the Quran was compiled, those compiling it weren't sure they had preserved the revelation in its original sequence. Abu Bakr and Umar documented it, while Ali, who held differing views, did not accept it. This dispute is still evident in the Shia sect, which claims the original Quran was safeguarded by Ali and wasn't allowed to be published. They assert that the current Quran is missing 10 parts. Similarly, the Quran that people wrote during the Prophet's time was later destroyed by Caliph Uthman under the pretext that different groups had different recitations. He then issued a new version of the Quran. But no one can say if it's the same one the Prophet conveyed, as the Prophet himself didn't see it as necessary to compile it in his lifetime. As the last Prophet, he might have prevented future divisions by having it recorded before his passing. In this episode, I will share some more points, presented in small segments. To avoid overwhelming you, I'll address contradictions in the Quran and hadiths and the ways in which they have been proven inaccurate by modern medical science, pointing out the inconsistencies and falsehoods created 15 centuries ago. Below, I'll reference some hadiths and explain how medical science has discredited many of the beliefs and false claims made in the Quran and hadiths of that era. About 60% of Muslims today belong to the Barelvi sect, which still holds firm against anyone who claims that the sun is stationary in the galaxy and that the Earth and other planets revolve around it. This sect, which makes up a significant portion of the global Muslim population, insists that scientific claims are lies, believing instead that the Earth is stationary while the sun and other celestial bodies revolve around it. Scientists, however, have thoroughly studied this topic, even landing on the moon and exploring galaxies, observing the sun, and showing live footage of the Earth's rotation. with so much of their beliefs based on hearsay and memorization. These people remain unaware of the facts that science reveals. Here's a rephrased version of each sentence. All those issuing fatwas of disbelief or writing the Quran, or even the companions, the tabi'un, and those who followed, were mostly uneducated and lacked formal knowledge. If they had access to sources of knowledge, they would have traveled to distant lands to research and study in libraries. In fact, those who wrote the hadiths were primarily residents of Persia and not Arabs. The writers were Zoroastrians, descendants of Zoroastrian families, who recorded events they never witnessed themselves. The Imams who recorded these 6 hadiths were all from Iran or Persia, and if they ever visited Arabia, it would have been for only a few days or months. The travel time between places on camels took as long as 6 months. So they wrote hadiths as if they had seen everything personally. They added certain elements to these narrations as part of a well-planned conspiracy. Things that are far from the essence of Islam. You'll notice influences from Zoroastrianism, Judaism, and even the narrator Abu Huraira, who contributed approximately 5,300 hadiths, about 2,300 of which were documented. He approached the Prophet 2 or 3 years before his passing, having previously been a Jew until the age of 30, and later started writing hadiths in favor of Emir Muawiyah for monetary compensation. I'll create a separate program to discuss who Abu Huraira was, his role, and how Umar forbade him from spreading false hadiths. Even Aisha, the Prophet's wife, confronted him, questioning how he could write so many hadiths within 2 or 3 years of knowing the Prophet, while she, who spent a lifetime with him, was unaware of these things. Abu Huraira responded disrespectfully to Aisha, saying she was often busy adorning herself to please the Prophet and did not notice what he was saying. He, being completely uneducated, filled hadiths with made-up and romanticized narratives. And after the Prophet's death, he approached Emir Muawiyah to gain rewards and positions by fabricating favorable hadiths for him. Listen to my point now about the process by which a child is formed in the womb, as I'll first discuss what the Quran and hadiths say, followed by references from medical science, books, scientists, and researchers. The Quran and hadiths suggest that a child remains as a drop of fluid in the mother's womb for 40 days, later transforming into a clot and eventually into a child. Science, however, asserts that sperm cannot remain in a woman's body for more than 3 to 5 days. Today, I'll share a few insights about this, followed by hadiths that falsely claim the Prophet knew everything about the world, even though such claims are far from reality. Creation of humans in the Quran and hadiths. Various verses in the Quran and hadiths discuss human creation and its stages, with Surah Al-Mu'minun particularly describing the transformation from a sperm drop to a clot, then to a flesh-like structure. Allah said in the Quran, "And we created man from an extract of clay. Then we placed him as a drop of fluid in a safe resting place. Then we made the fluid into a clot. Then the clot into a lump of flesh. Then we made bones from this flesh. Then covered the bones with flesh. And then we developed it into a new creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators." Surah Al-Mu'minun, verses 12 to 14. This verse describes the stages of human creation. From clay to a sperm drop in the mother's womb, then into a clot, and gradually into bones and flesh, ultimately forming a complete human being. Creation in hadiths. Abdullah bin Mas'ud narrated that the Prophet Muhammad said, "Each of you is formed in his mother's womb for 40 days as a sperm drop, then for an equal period as a clot, and then for the same period as a lump of flesh. Then Allah sends an angel who breathes life into it and commands 4 matters: his sustenance, his age, his actions, and whether he will be blessed or wretched." Sahih Bukhari, 3208. Sahih Muslim, 2643. According to medical science, sperm does not remain in the womb for such a long period. Research shows that it survives for only about 3 to 5 days in a woman's body before losing its vitality. Scientific research. Experts like Dr. Derek Levine confirm that sperm can survive up to a maximum of 5 days in the female body. Reference: The Physiology of Reproduction. Dr. Derek Levine. 2015. According to Cleveland Clinic, the lifespan of sperm typically ranges from 3 to 5 days. Reference: Cleveland Clinic's Health Library. Sperm lifespan. 2021. According to Maternal Health Research, conception occurs when sperm fertilizes the ovum within 24 hours, forming a zygote. The beginning of human creation. Reference: Human Embryology and Developmental Biology, Bruce M. Carlson. 2019. Medical science shows that sperm does not remain in the womb for 40 days. Instead, it disintegrates within a few days. Criticism of Hadith narrations. In Sahih Muslim 2749. Under the Book of Repentance, Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet said, "By him in whose hand is my soul, if you did not sin, Allah would take you away and replace you with people who would sin and seek forgiveness, so that he may forgive them." Sahih Muslim 2749. Here, Abu Hurairah is attributing to the Prophet a statement suggesting that Allah would end the lives of people who do not sin and replace them with sinners to seek his forgiveness. This implies that people are encouraged to sin, a claim far from the reality of divine justice, which is why such narrations seem fabricated. Abu Hurairah falsely portrayed the Prophet as a sinner with multiple women, allegedly promoting sin under divine permission, misleading others to sin under the pretext that Allah would replace them otherwise. Can a religion, a prophet, or a Quran that claims Allah orders people to sin truly be genuine? Sahih Bukhari 6614. Book of Predestination. Chapter: The Debate Between Adam and Moses. Translator. 1. Sheikh al-Hadith Hafiz Abdul Sattar Hamad. Darussalam. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, who reported from the Prophet that, he said, Adam and Moses had a debate. Moses said to Adam, "O Adam, you are our father. It is you who caused us to be deprived and led us out of paradise." Adam replied, "O Moses, Allah chose you to speak with him and wrote the Torah for you by his own hand. Are you blaming me for something that Allah had written for me in my destiny 40 years before he created me?" Finally, Adam won the debate over Moses. The Prophet repeated this statement 3 times. Sufyan said, Abu Zinad narrated to us from Al-Araj, from Abu Hurairah, who reported from the Prophet a similar narration. Now, let's listen to the absurdity in this hadith. In it, Abu Hurairah is claiming on behalf of the Prophet Muhammad that Moses argued with Adam, saying, "You are blaming me for sinning and coming into the world." Adam responded, "You are wrong in accusing me, as Allah himself willed it. He wrote it in my destiny that I would commit sin." So, first, let's understand that to justify their earlier hadith as true, they're fabricating more lies. One lie upon 100 others. They claim that Allah himself urges sinning, saying if people do not sin, he would destroy them and replace them with another people. Likewise, Adam argued with Moses, saying, "It was Allah who caused me to sin. So Moses, why do you criticize me?" Thus, Adam won the argument, and Moses lost then. Abu Hurairah presents another lie. Consider this. The gap between Adam and Prophet Muhammad is about 6 to 7,000 years, as Islamic scholars estimate. Though this too could be false. Perhaps Adam never existed. Or, if he did, it may have been millions, even billions of years ago. No one truly knows. Yet they spin a story, claiming 124,000 prophets existed, each living an average of 70 to 150 years, to fit their timeline of 6 to 7,000 years. The biggest lie, however, is that no proof exists for any prophet's existence. No historical texts mention them, even in their Quran. It was just a few prophets that Prophet Muhammad heard of, and thus only 25 prophets were named in the Quran as Allah's chosen ones. If Prophet Muhammad had heard of only 25 prophets, they could have named the rest without references if space was an issue. Moving on. If we accept their claim that Adam existed 6 to 7,000 years ago, and that Abu Hurairah is recounting this story, despite being uneducated and the narrators of this hadith being similarly uneducated. How would they know what happened 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, including the debate between Adam and Moses? Who could believe this? When Abu Hurairah lived, the era was marked by such ignorance that they barely had scribes to record revelations. How could these people or their companions claim to know history spanning 6,000 to 7,000 years? They don't even cite any books or sources to support the claim that Adam and Moses debated, leading to Adam's victory. And with this story, they try to validate the idea that sinning is justified, claiming Allah himself causes sin, as he did with Adam. Therefore, the Prophet and his followers supposedly received a command to sin, or Allah would replace them with new followers. What could be a bigger joke than this for followers of this religion? 2,433 years after Adam, Moses was born as the 26th generation. Lifespans before Moses were long. The 25 generations before him lived an average of 500 years, with generations spaced about 100 years apart. Today, people live around 80 years, with generations spanning 25 to 35 years. Moses covered 2,500 years of history across 26 generations, which would require over 80 generations today. Old Testament generations from Adam to Moses. The Pentateuch is known as the Torah. The Torah compiles the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It is referred to as the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses, in Christian tradition, and as the written Torah in Rabbinic Judaism. Generations before Moses. Adam lived 930 years, died 216 years before Noah's birth. Seth, Adam's third son, lived 912 years, knew Noah for 34 years. Methuselah, Seth's fourth great-grandson, lived 969 years, knew Adam for 243 years and Seth for 355. Lamech, Methuselah's son, lived 777 years, died 5 years before the flood. Father of Noah, Noah lived 950 years, knew Methuselah for 600 years and spoke with his father Lamech for 595. Shem, Noah's son and the ancestor of all Semites, lived 600 years, spoke with Methuselah for 98 years, and survived the flood by 502 years. Eber, or Heber, great-grandson of Shem, lived 464 years, knew Noah and Shem. Terah, Eber's 3 times great-grandson, lived 205 years, was 130 when Abraham was born, knew both Noah and Shem. Abraham, Terah's son, lived 175 years, knew Shem for 150 years. Noah died 2 years before Abraham's birth. Heber outlived Abraham by 4 years. Isaac, Abraham and Sarah's son, lived 180 years, knew Shem for 50 years. Jacob, Israel, Isaac's son and father of the 12 tribes, lived 147 years, knew Abraham for 20. Levi, Israel's third oldest son, knew Isaac for about 45 years, knew Amram, Moses' father, as his grandson, and passed down the oral tradition. Moses, Amram's son and Levi's great-grandson, lived 120 years, knew his father for about 65 years, received the oral tradition from God, and was commanded to write the Old Testament's first 5 books. Friends, since this video has gotten quite long, I'll conclude it here to save you time and maximize what you gain from listening. In future videos, I'll continue sharing contradictions and falsehoods in the Quran and Hadith, along with insights into other religions: Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Sikhism, and others. I'll reveal how religious leaders have exploited these faiths as a tool to gain fame, wealth, and reputation, presenting only hearsay and made-up stories. Don't rely on my words. Judge them critically. This is my personal research, and it could be right or wrong. But you, more than anyone, are the most capable of arriving at the truth. By examining this research yourself, you'll see that amidst these hunters, You're ensnared in a web spun by those aiming to empty your pockets in the name of their own religions and beliefs.